Setting up classes in TurnItIn.com. Right after you log in, you'll be presented with the All Classes screen, and it should be blank. To add a class, simply click on the green button labeled Add Class. Choose a class type. You have Standard and Master. We'll use Standard this time. Class name. Type in the title of the class. Choose an enrollment password. Each class needs to have its own enrollment password. Subject area. It has a drop-down list. Choose the one that's most appropriate. Student ages. What's appropriate? Class start date is configured as of the date that you're doing this. Class end date. I'm going to set it for this semester. Submit. And the class is completed. Notice on this screen that there's a class ID and the enrollment password. The students will need both. Be sure to write them down. Click Continue. Now, if you need it at some point in the future, here on your class list, here's the class ID. To check the password, come over here, click Edit, and you'll see the password, and you can also change it. You can change any of these designations at this point. Okay, now we're going to add another class. Choose Add Class, Standard, give it a class name. An enrollment password, subject area, student age range, and once again an end date. Class ID, enrollment password. Now I'm going to come in here to edit, and I'm going to convert it to a master class. Now we're going to add a new section. Come over here, click on the plus section. It's asking for a TA's name. You can put in the name of a TA or your own. Last name and email address. It can be the same email address as you already use and log in with. Click Submit. Section name or number. I have multiple periods, so I'm going to list this as period 1. Give it an enrollment password and click Submit. Continue. Now section 1 I don't really want. I'm going to get rid of that. Notice it asks to confirm, and it warns you that if there's any data there, it's going to be deleted also. Now I'm going to add the next section. Again, repeat this. Click Submit. Section name. Enrollment password. Submit. Notice that I now have 2 sections. Now to add some assignments. I'm going to come up here to the first one, choose Add Assignment. Assignment title, give it the name. Point value, which is optional. You can also choose to restrict it to only files that TurnItIn can check for originality or any type. Since this is a text file and I want to check it for originality, I'm going to choose that. Start date. The due date. This is going to be due on the 22nd. I'm going to set a time at the end of school, 3:10 p.m. Post date, that's the date that you expect to post the grades. You're not bound to it, but it gives them an idea of when you might get around to grading it. Let's take a look at optional settings. Are there any special instructions that you have? Will you accept submissions after this due date? Do you want it to generate an originality report? In other words, will it flag anything that it appears that the student has copied? When should the report be generated? Choices are immediately, first report is final, immediately, or they can overwrite it, or on the due date. I'm going to choose that they can overwrite it. Now, the one problem with that is that if they do a second submission before the due date, it may take up to a day for the report to be generated. Should it exclude bibliographic materials? By default, no. Exclude quoted materials? No. Exclude small matches? No. Allow students to see the originality report? I prefer that they do. Submit papers to the standard repository or no repository. It's probably best to keep it to the standard. Search options for when you're looking and for when it's looking. Student repository, in other words, any papers that have been submitted to Turnitin. Current and archived internet pages. Periodicals, journals, and publications. I prefer to have it checked for everything. If you use a rubric, you can choose Common Core rubrics for what you've already selected. Should the grammar checker be enabled? What level are you talking about? Elementary, English learners, middle school, high school. What type of language? US English, UK English, or both? And things that it normally checks for: spelling, grammar, usage, mechanics, style. Those are all by default. If you don't want any of them, just uncheck what it is you don't want. And finally, do you want to save these options as your defaults? If you don't, uncheck that. If you do, leave that checked, and then in the future you won't have to go back and do this. Submit. It now shows an assignment. They can start August 13th, which is today. It is due on the 22nd at 3:10, and you expect to post on the 25th. This shows how many papers have currently been submitted. Let's go back to the home and take a look at submitting for where you have more than one. I'm going to go to the heading, Digital 1, choose New Assignment, and this part is all basically the same. Due date, I'm going to make the 22nd again. 3:10 p.m. Post date, I'm going to say the 25th. And let's take a look at this section. Back to optional settings. And if you notice, it's the same as it was last time. I'm going to press submit. And right now, you have one more step. Notice that these check boxes next to periods 1 and 3. Once I hit this submit, it'll be pushed out or assigned to both of those sections. If I wanted it to only one of them, I could uncheck it. I'm going to want it to both. Hit submit. And now it's sent out to both of them. Let's go back to home, and if I take a look at period 1, notice here's that assignment. If I go to period 3, there's its copy, and it's all ready for the students to submit.